Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 321. We're going to be discussing the Dak Prescott signing, plus some trades that happened in the NFL and a couple of other things too. Joined once again by Jacob Kamiker from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great today. We're right on the eve of NFL free agency. Got a bunch of moves today and in the past couple days, so it's getting to be that exciting time of year again. So I am amped up, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have a lot of signings next week. Some re-signings this week, some negotiations. But the big stuff's going to happen next week. So, but we've had some stuff already. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to the Dak Prescott signing, as I said, the two trades, and then we're going to talk about some players who are franchised. So, going to put this up at the bottom, kind of like guide us through where we're going to go. Dak Prescott was re-signed on Tuesday, or I guess Monday night. It was a 4-year deal worth $160 million with $126 million guaranteed. I have to say, I did not expect this to happen. I thought he was going to be franchised again. Even if he was re-signed, I thought it would be a team-friendly deal, and yet he's getting almost a fully guaranteed contract for 4 years. So what are your thoughts on this, and what would you rate this for the Cowboys?
I was surprised they signed him to a long-term deal too, because it was clearly the Cowboys. I don't necessarily want to say caving, because they did want Prescott back on a long-term deal, but they gave into more of what his demands were for an extension than, maybe negotiating it down a bit and using the salary, the franchise tag one more time. So I was surprised by that. I don't love this deal. I don't hate it outright. I'm teetering on the verge of a C- D+ on this one if I had to grade it. Just my thought process with this: Dak Prescott puts up good numbers and he looks the part of a good quarterback. But as we've talked about at length on this podcast before, there's just been too many times where he just doesn't look good when his supporting cast isn't as good. And anytime a quarterback signs for this type of money, you have to be sure that they're good enough to carry you to some victories in the playoffs. We don't know that about Dak. I know he got hurt this past year, but even before he got hurt, he wasn't able to get the team wins consistently. And I know I think they were 2-3 in his first 5 starts. I think that's what they ended up going. So people will point to the fact that if they stayed on that pace, they may have been able to win the division. But at the same time, they got lucky to beat Atlanta, because Atlanta, they completely blew a game, which Atlanta just does all the time. It's really, I don't want to make jokes about it, but I got a picture of James White diving in the end zone from the Super Bowl over my shoulder. So, that's about all you need to know about Atlanta blowing leads. But I can understand why the Cowboys wanted to re-sign him, because he has been a good quarterback. He still has upside, but for this amount of money, especially coming off of an ankle injury, a leg injury that could impact him going forward, he's ahead of schedule in his recovery by all accounts. But there's just so much risk to this deal. I'm just surprised they didn't franchise tag him, and then maybe next offseason, if he plays really well, then they feel better about giving into his demands. But this feels like a classic Cowboys deal. Jerry Jones really likes Dak Prescott, really likes what he does for the team, really believes in him. I don't think it was the smartest move to give him that much money and a no trade clause, because if things go south, they're not going to be able to offload him except unless he wants to go somewhere else. So I have to say this is probably a dead 70 on this. So right on the C- D+ scale for me. There is some upside, but it's just a lot of money to commit to Prescott.
Yeah, you graded this higher than I did. I gave it a D. I really hate the signing. I hate the timing of the signing. He suffered that major injury in Week 5 against the Giants, and you have to wonder, at least let's see how he plays off that injury. What if he's not the same? We saw Carson Wentz suffer an injury, and he was never the same after that, especially the year after, where he barely played. So I could at least understand the timing of it if Prescott returned for Week 1 next year, and the Cowboys started off 4-1 or 5-1, something like that, and he was having he was posting great stats and they were looking great. Then I could at least understand the timing of it. But why would you do this without knowing if he's 100% yet? That's just so risky. On top of all the guaranteed money, and we've seen tier 3 quarterbacks and tier 4 quarterbacks, and I'd probably put Prescott in tier 3. kind of like, maybe a little bit better than Kirk Cousins, like around there. But we've seen what like Kirk Cousins' contract has done to Minnesota. Like they've had to cut so many players. Same thing with like Joe Flacco in Baltimore after they signed him to a big deal. They had a great roster beforehand, but after that contract, they had to cut a lot of players. And so I think if you have an elite quarterback, then obviously you have to pay him this sort of money, like Patrick Mahomes, even Deshaun Watson. But Prescott's not as good as those guys. And to give him this much money just means you're not going to be able to build a good team around him. And he's not elite, so he can't carry a team like that. He talked about the Atlanta game. That's kind of like fresh in my mind because I just saw it. He threw for 450 yards in that game, and he scored 4 touchdowns. And he didn't play well in that game. So like I think like the stats are misleading with him. Like he threw for 450 yards or more 3 times last year, and like you said, there were 2 and 3. Like he wasn't as good as the stats made him out to be. It's kind of like it's like a fantasy player made this contract. It's like, wow, like Prescott's such a great fantasy player. Let's sign him to this big deal. Where I think it's just going to really hurt the Cowboys in the long run. I understand why Jerry Jones did it, but I think he should have waited and been more patient and franchise. I would have franchised Prescott and then kind of seen where he went from there. Like I said, if he started great next year, then I could get the contract. But I think this is too soon. It's too much.
Yeah, I think you've convinced me to go with the D+, high-end D+ on this one. Like I said, there's upside, but the risk there is just a big deal. And I see what Andrew's saying here about maybe if his coaching was better, Prescott would be better, or at least more consistent. But it's kind of hard to justify giving a guy $40 million a year and then saying like, oh, maybe if he has better coaching, he'll get better. Like, I understand that like if Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett hadn't been Prescott's coaches, maybe it's different, but we'll see how he does in year 2 under McCarthy, because if things don't go well there, they'll probably be looking for a new coach after that, though Jones's loyalty knows no bounds. But yeah, I would have waited. I would have franchise tagged him. I would have even said like, hey, Dak, maybe we franchise tag you right now. We have the framework of an extension, but they maybe, I don't want to say lowball him, but maybe they say like, we know you're asking for this. This is what we want. Let's see how you come out the gate next season, like you suggested. And then maybe you could say to him, if you look good through the first month, we'll come to an agreement. Like then maybe you do it down the road. Then you at least have some way of seeing it. Even then, I don't think I would love it, but I could at least understand it more. The problem with this, as you said, is the roster building portion of this. If Dallas was like a ready to win now team, I think we might feel a little differently about this, but they have a lot of holes, especially on defense. And now their margin for error is razor thin there in every draft pick and signing they make. If they botch one early pick or one bigger money signing, their team isn't going to be able to have the depth to replace those guys. So we'll see how this pans out. But I think that right now I don't love it. But if Prescott progresses and actually can impact winning and not just put up stats, I think that will ultimately determine the grade of this. But for now, it doesn't look great on paper.
Yeah, so Andrew, I mean, he made a good point about Dak not having good coaching. That's for sure. And you kind of have to wonder what Jerry Jones is thinking with these coaching decisions, like not firing Garrett and then hiring Mike McCarthy, just so bad. But on the other hand, can you imagine how bad or not as good as Prescott would have been in his first few years if he didn't have an elite offensive line in front of him? Like he had one of the best offensive lines protecting him from the start. And then once Travis Frederick retired or got hurt, and then later retired, and then Tyron Smith started getting injured, things kind of fell apart for him, and he kind of got worse. And I know he's still posting great stats, but like I said, it's all in garbage time against bad teams. So I think that like I said, it's too much too soon.